Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're basically going to act as biomechanical detectives to solve a very specific and honestly incredibly nagging lower body pain. You know, if you're a runner, an athlete, or really just someone who likes to stay active, you already know that not all pain is created equal, right? Some aches are super obvious, you know why they happened. But others, well, they linger. They kind of hide deep in the tissue, and they completely disrupt your routine. So today, we are zeroing in on one of the absolute most frustrating mysteries in sports medicine, that deep, stubborn ache right at the very base of your pelvis.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wrapped up a long run, a tough sprint session, or even just a heavy leg day and felt a literal pain in the butt? And no, I am not talking about normal muscle soreness here. I'm talking about a highly specific, very localized ache right exactly where your upper thigh meets your glutes. You know the one? It usually hurts the absolute most when you're just sitting down, driving your car, or even bending over to tie your shoes. If you are nodding your head at the screen right now, trust me, stick around because you are about to get some serious answers.
And look, I want to assure you right off the bat, you are definitely not alone in dealing with this, not by a long shot. In the running world, overuse injuries are the absolute dominant force. They account for up to 80% of all running-related clinical presentations. 80%. That's a huge number. To put that into perspective, it means the vast majority of injuries aren't from sudden traumatic snaps or, crazy falls. They're from repetitive, submaximal loading where the body's tissues just couldn't recover fast enough to keep up. And this sit bone ache, it is one of the classic textbook examples of this overuse phenomenon.
So, let's put a proper medical name to this mystery. In sports medicine, this is called proximal hamstring tendinopathy. Now let's just break that down into plain English for a second. Proximal simply means the part closest to the center of your body. Your hamstring muscles actually attach way up at the very top of your leg to a bony little prominence on your pelvis called the ischial tuberosity. But honestly, we're just going to call that your sit bone because, well, it's literally the bone you sit on. Tendinopathy just means the tendon right there is overloaded, irritated, and it's failing to heal properly. So what you get is a deep, localized ache right at that exact anchor point.
All right, moving into our first main section. Finding the root cause. Let's figure out what's actually going on here.
To really solve this mystery, we've got to enter the whodunit phase of the investigation. And I want you to completely reframe your thinking here for a second. When your hamstring tendon is absolutely screaming at you, is it the actual culprit or is it just the victim? Think of your body as a kinetic chain, kind of like a series of falling dominoes. When something goes wrong at the sit bone, we have to look up and down that chain to see who actually pushed the very first domino. Because as you'll see in almost every single case, your hamstring is just an overworked employee covering for someone else's incompetence. Let me give you my absolute favorite analogy for this: the physical group project. Imagine your hip extension, which is the movement that pushes you forward when you run, as a high school group project. Your primary team members here are your massive glute muscles and your hamstrings. But what happens when you have a slacking coworker? If your glutes are weak or neurologically turned off, they just stop doing their fair share of the lifting. Suddenly, the stressed out hamstring has to do all the work of propelling your entire body weight forward. No wonder the tendon at the sit bone gets totally frayed and inflamed. I mean, it's literally doing a two-person job all by itself.
And this brilliantly illustrates how modern life just kind of sets us up for failure. I mean, why are the glutes slacking in the first place? Well, usually it's because we sit way too much. Prolonged sitting creates something called reciprocal inhibition. Basically, your hip flexors on the front of your body get super tight and short, which literally sends a neurological signal to your glutes to just shut off and take a nap. This tightness then tilts your entire pelvis forward, almost like you're spilling water out of the front of a ball. That forward tilt aggressively pulls on the hamstring, winding it incredibly tight like a guitar string right at the sit bone. It sets it up for maximum tension and eventually failure.
So how do we fix it? Step 1, the low bridge. Time to calm that tendon down. To fix this mess, we need a targeted protocol that builds base strength without irritating that angry tendon any further. We do this using the technique called an isometric hold. All this means is that you are sustaining a heavy muscle contraction without actually moving the joint at all. You aren't lengthening the muscle, you aren't shortening it, you're just holding it completely static against resistance. Now, why do we do this? Because static loading provides an incredible analgesic or pain-relieving effect to the tendon. It's almost like a magic trick. It modulates your central nervous system, dropping the pain sensitivity so we can finally start repairing the tissue. Here is exactly how you do the midfoot single leg bridge. You're going to lie supine, flat on your back, with your target knee bent just a little bit, right around 30 to 45 degrees. Lift your non-working leg up in the air. Now, push your body weight specifically through the midfoot of your working leg and lift your hips just slightly off the floor. Now listen up, because this is absolutely crucial. You must keep those hips low. If you lift your hips way up high, you put your hip into deep flexion, which aggressively compresses that healing tendon right against the sit bone. We do not want that. Keep it low, push through the midfoot, and just hold that static tension.
Moving right along to step 2, the hip hinge. Time to rebuild the chain.
Okay, so once the tendon builds a solid base level of load tolerance from those holds, we can address the root cause. This is where we go back to our slacking coworker analogy and finally rebuild the group project. The hip hinge literally forces the glutes and the hamstrings to communicate and work together again as a cohesive team. We're going to wake up that gluteus maximus, hold it completely accountable for hip extension, and basically teach your pelvis how to stay stable while you were standing on just one leg. We achieve this through the single leg hip hinge, which you might know as a single leg RDL or Romanian deadlift. Stand tall on your target leg with just a slight soft bend in the knee. Now imagine a straight metal rod running from your head all the way down to your tailbone. You are going to hinge forward straight from the hips, keeping that spine totally neutral. As your torso goes down, your non-stance leg extends straight back like a pendulum. And here's the trick. Your pelvis must remain perfectly level. Seriously, do not let it twist open. When you feel a good stretch in the back of the leg, drive through your heel and use your glute to pull yourself back up to standing. This exercise fundamentally rewires your running mechanics.
And finally, step 3, the hamstring slider. Let's bulletproof this tissue.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we ensure this injury never comes back. We have to literally bulletproof the tissue using what's called eccentric loading. An eccentric contraction is simply when you place high mechanical stress on a muscle and tendon while it is actively lengthening. Think of like slowly lowering a really heavy weight. In clinical rehab, eccentric loading is the absolute gold standard for chronic tendinopathy. It places direct, high-stress mechanical tension on the tissue, which actually signals your body to produce brand new type 1 collagen fibers and aligns them perfectly to withstand the forces of running.
To perform the single-leg hamstring slider, you're going to want to be on a smooth floor wearing socks, or just put a small towel under your foot. Start on your back and elevate your hips into a single-leg bridge. Now the magic happens in the slow-motion lengthening. Very slowly extend that target leg outward, sliding the heel away from your body. You want to take a painfully slow 5 to 10 full seconds to slide the leg all the way out until it's nearly straight. It's a slow burn for sure, but it's in that slow, controlled lengthening that you are truly remodeling the tendon and building ultimate long-term resilience.
Which brings us to the final wrap-up, the golden rule of recovery: active loading over rest.
Mastering these 3 steps requires a fundamental understanding of modern sports science, because for decades, the old medical myth was that if something hurts, you just need to rest it, ice it, and statically stretch it. Sound familiar? But the golden rule today is that complete rest can actually lead to tissue deconditioning. Prolonged passive rest actually causes your tendons to atrophy, your muscles to weaken, and, get this, even your bone density to drop. By just sitting around and resting completely, you are actually making the injured area weaker and far less capable of handling the demands of your sport. Instead of resting, you have to utilize what is essentially biological magic, a process called mechanotransduction. This is the process where controlled mechanical loading, like our isometric holds, those hip hinges, and those painfully slow eccentric sliders, physically stimulates cellular adaptation. Your body actually needs active, controlled stress to signal the cells to wake up and rebuild stronger. Movement isn't just a test to see if you've recovered. Movement, specifically prescribed and appropriately loaded movement, is the actual cure itself.
So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought as you evaluate your own training routine. Are you actively managing your body's group projects, ensuring every single muscle is pulling its weight? Or are you letting a slacking muscle, like a weak, lazy glute, ruin your run by literally destroying your sit bone? Take a close look at your own kinetic chain. Try out that low bridge, master the hip hinge, and start building some real, lasting resilience. Thanks for exploring this explainer with me today, and keep learning.